Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the MACE Podcast. I'm your host, Marco Macente, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. Wrapping up our season 2, which is almost over, but not yet, I'm so happy to share a new episode with a special guest coming from the United States, MJ. MJ is the Chief Strategy Officer at Credibly, a fintech lending company where she's responsible for leading and implementing the company's growth strategy, as well as overseeing marketing and sales. Her scope of responsibilities also include innovation incubation, management training and development, as well as leading the Gen AI business model transformation at Credibly. Prior to joining Credibly, MJ worked for more than 8 years at Ford Motor Company, taking on various roles in marketing and sales and corporate strategy, and was the founder of and CEO of a new mobility business startup within Ford called Go Ride Health. MJ holds a BA in literature from Harvard University, and she has an MBA in marketing and operation from Wharton Business School. I'm so happy to share with you her insights, her feedback about important topics that hit our workplace. We're going to speak about leadership, culture, and of course, technology, because MJ is a creator in LinkedIn of the various articles, AI and technology dedicated. How can leaders shape their leadership style in order to be seen as effective leaders by their teams? Which are the skills that a leader should have in order to be seen as an effective leader? Why can we say that culture is very important in a company or in an organization where, of course, leadership is also connected to the culture that the company instills in its employees? And why technology is so important right now, and which is the role that technology play in this digital world? Please stay tuned and enjoy our conversation. Hello, MJ. Welcome to the Maze Podcast. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. I mean, I'm very excited to have you as well. Are you tuning in from the United States? Is that correct?
I am. I'm based out of Michigan, so I'm taking some time out on a Friday to speak with you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your time. And thanks a lot for your availability. And I'm so excited to see guests like you joining me from the other side of the planet, right? I'm based in Italy, so I'm very happy to see that the Maze podcast is more than ever international. So, MJ, I have already shared with the audience a little bit of your background, a little bit of your experience, and I follow you on LinkedIn, and I see many times you posting a lot of insights around AI, artificial intelligence, technology, and leadership, and many trends, right, that we have all around the world across different industries. My first question for you to kick off this amazing episode, MJ, can you please share with us what you see and hear on that front, on the things that you leverage your expertise on, and which is the impact that AI, artificial intelligence, is having on the workplace, where humans are still working and dealing on business priorities and challenges, MJ?
Yes, so that's a great question. Obviously, I think we can probably spend the entire podcast and more
Mhm.
talking about that, but I think I'll just give maybe a couple of heavy hitters and also a couple of trends that I think I'm pretty certain are going to come to pass.
Yeah.
So the first thing about AI that I get asked a lot about from everyone is there's a lot of nervousness around, is it going to replace jobs? Is it going to reduce the workforce?
Yeah.
And the answer is not as clear as whether that's a yes or no.
Hmm.
And one of the things that is very special about AI and its integration into the industries is that, one, it will affect every industry. I'm absolutely confident that that is going to happen, and if it hasn't already happened. There's been a lot of papers recently that have talked about increase in both productivity and revenue. However, there's a few other things that I think make this more complex. And so I want to go through those
Yeah.
because sometimes people see the downside of AI and they don't see the opportunity, right? The first one is that whether AI is used to reduce employee headcount or to augment existing headcount is a decision that any CEO of a company can make. So the choices you make about what you're going to do strategically with AI speaks a lot more to the culture of the company, and we can talk about culture later,
Yes.
and to the leadership vision. Any CEO who is outsourcing that strategy to AI to say, well, I don't know how I'm going to use AI, but I expect that it's going to do that. It's basically giving up their control of how they're going to use that technology. And I
Yeah.
think that is a mistake. And it has backfired on people. It doesn't play well with the public, it doesn't play well with the media. So I would encourage any business leader to develop their own point of view on how they're going to use this technology.
Yeah.
The second thing is AI will have fundamental effects on work streams that are very discrete, very repeatable, and that are not customer facing. So, with all trends in automation, not just artificial intelligence, what it does is really good at seeking and hitting a goal over and over, provided that the goal is well defined and that the goal is repeatable. So, generative AI generative AI is a little bit more special because the nature of it is that it's flexible and it can find a business objective and hit it without you explaining how it can do that.
Hmm.
That's the magic, right? That's the part where people are like, oh, that's the black box because it's not super explainable. But the nature of generative AI is very similar to automation, which is the more repeatable and the more discrete work is, that can be replaced and that can be augmented and made better. However, if you look at an organization, how does work actually happen in an organization? There's complexity, right? There's use cases that are outside of the standard deviation. So AI today is not very good at that. Even the autonomous agents, which are not really autonomous, they produce, I would call probably average work, but it's not great work. And
Hmm.
so I think one thing to keep in mind about AI's impact on work is also that the nature of work, depending on how complex it is more or less affected by AI. And
Hmm.
so real work in actual organizations take routes that are inexplicable and are complicated sometimes. And so I wouldn't encourage people to dismiss the complexity of work that actually happens in ways that people don't understand. Um, which leads me to my third point, right? So the first part is about CEOs having a vision and
Yeah.
strategy. The second is understanding what kind of work is replaceable, what kind of work is harder to replace. The third part is there is a lot of just average stuff being done. Now you have more people who are capable of writing average things. So, for example, cover letters used to be a differentiator. Now they're not because AI can really write decent cover
Yeah.
letters. But it can't write an amazing cover letter either. And so if you read AI writing or if you look at some of the PowerPoints and things it's made, it's generally okay, but it's not great. And so what ends up happening is that the bar for quality and the definition around quality starts to increase, which brings me to my fourth point, which is that what's really interesting, what I'm noticing with AI and how it's affecting the workplace is that the role of expertise is changing. And also, it's imperative for leaders to do better in actually setting business objectives, how it's measured, and what you're really trying to measure. That's going to then work with the AI. There's been a lot of companies that have failed just because they were trying to measure cost reduction versus, say, improving health, right? In healthcare companies.
Yeah.
And then the AI was used to reduce cost, but didn't actually make sick people better. So those
Yeah.
are four things when it comes to AI.
Thanks a lot for sharing, MJ. And let's say that it's not one size fits all, right? The spectrum of variability of variables that we have around this topic is so complex that we needed to narrow these, as you mentioned, considering those factors, right, that are hitting and the things that we are seeing around us. So thanks a lot for sharing, and I'm sure that the audience is gonna treasure the things that you said, and that the people are gonna start, thinking about which are the connections and which are the link that you have just mentioned with the things that they are doing, in their daily work. So thanks a lot. You mentioned already two things that we're gonna cover in this episode, and one of them, of course, is leadership. Leadership is a big topic, and I have covered this topic with many guests in my podcast, but of course, I wanted to get your insights on that. People still join companies for good leaders and leave companies for bad leaders. So leadership is playing a pivotal role in the organizational scheme. So, speaking about leadership, can you please tell me, in your view, which are the top three critical skills that a leader should have in order to be seen as a leader? And speaking about effective leadership, how can leaders, in your opinion, be effective when managing people and teams in order to be seen as effective as well?
Yeah, so I'll that's a great question. I'll speak on the first three and then I'll really expound
Yeah.
on one that I think truly works in effective leadership. So for me, the three critical skills, and my background's a little bit different. I'm typically in very male-dominated industries, right? And I'm in part of the C-suite, and so I have a little bit of a different view on sort of what makes leadership work. The three things for me are intentionality, self-awareness, and accountability. And
Hmm.
so I'll go through one by one, right? So intentionality is being very deliberate about what you're trying to do, and that manifests itself in all ways. And when we talk about effective leadership, that's the trait that I really want to come back to because I believe that is the hardest thing of the three. Intentionality is being very purposeful in what you're trying to do without it being disgenuine or inauthentic.
Hmm.
How do you have that is really around how self-aware you are. I often tell people that every leadership failure that I have seen and felt and have encountered myself, not just what I've seen, but what I've when I failed, is an insecurity playing out on someone else's terms. And I very much believe that. Whether it's an ego driven thing, whether it's a gap between how you see yourself, how other people see you, whether it's because somebody made you feel a certain way and then so you lash back out, all of these are insecurities that you haven't quite understood or managed translating themselves into actions, words, emotions in real time. And
Hmm.
so we're always going to have them. These are I'm not talking about eliminating these type of things because we're not perfect, we're human beings, but self-awareness is understanding what is your process and what is your pattern and what tends to happen. And
Yeah.
so the more when you're coming up in leadership, the more you're able to be self-aware, to check against yourself, to be skeptical sometimes of your own intentions, because self-doubt is not always bad. Sometimes it creates good checks and balances.
Yeah.
Asking for feedback, that's going to help you be more confident in the leadership scenarios where it actually matters, which is often when you have to make difficult choices and decisions. And the
Yeah.
third one is accountability. And accountability ties into those difficult choices and decisions. One of the really interesting things about team dynamics that I constantly tell my team is that feeling good about collaborating often is not a predictor of teams making the best decisions or for having the best result. You may love to work with each other and you may think each other are great people, but doesn't mean that you're going to be producing the best or you're the highest performance. Feeling good about working together and actually having a high performing team are two very different things. In fact, one of the most predictive things about having a high performing team is what's called productive conflict, which means people feel safe enough to challenge and question each other and push each other to higher standards. Having that kind of psychological safety and accountability, I have been in conversations where I see people challenge each other in the right way, not in the way where they're accusing other people of being terrible human beings, right? Or being super emotional, but asking real business questions. And you can see the conversation get pushed in a different direction. And then the end result is actually way better. And I love that. And that's one of those things where having teams where they're holding each other accountable for high standards, that's what leadership I think is really about. So intentionality, self-awareness, and accountability.
Mhm.
When you talk about effective leadership, intentionality to me is a really big piece because it is about you adjusting who you are to make sure that your people can perform. And that I know sounds very strange because a lot of people say, well, you have to be very authentic. But authenticity isn't about you coming to the table with all of your flaws and dumping them everywhere and say, well, I'm just a human, right? It doesn't actually give you the free reign to say, you just get to be who you are without checks and balances.
Yeah.
Intentionality is understanding that by tweaking certain parts of yourself, you can affect change in a way that is much more rapid than if you were to not. And
Yeah.
so, being an effective leader to me is about asking really good questions. It's about knowing how to advance someone from, let's say, being very task oriented to being to having them be a critical thinker and developing those skills by changing, for example, what questions you ask as they
Yeah.
grow in the organization. I have a whole training I've done with people on what kind of feedback do you give what kind of questions you ask at certain levels of employee development. You have to change with that person. And the
Yeah.
great thing about intentionality is that works, but it doesn't scale very well. So you also have to make sure you're picking managers and training them to do the same.
Yeah, thanks a lot, MJ, for sharing. I totally agree with you. So those three skills are the ones that I would see, in an effective leader in the new workplace in which we are working. And I love the idea of training because speaking with many leaders out there, I've seen that. We were not born leaders, so of course a lot of trainings are needed in order, to leverage such a kind of skill. And I am very fan of learning and training, when it comes to, getting those skills and leveraging those skills, which of course cannot just be there. So you needed to be skeptical, as you mentioned, and you needed to be self-aware of who you are and where you are, in order to get to the level that you need in order to adjust yourself with the team or to the teams that you're working with. So thanks a lot for sharing. Now, speaking about leadership, of course, and speaking about the themes, what we have in the middle we have the values, of course, right, that the leader should instill in the teams and in the people that the leader is gonna work with. And speaking about the values that matter the most, I have in my mind trust and respect, which of course are two important values that belong to the culture of a potential organization. So my third question for you, MJ, is why is culture so important, and why does it play a pivotal role in high-performing teams?
Yeah, great question. So there's a really famous saying that says culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it's very much true. You can have the best strategy, you can have the best plan, but if you don't have the culture that allows that strategy to be executed, it will fail. The reason culture is important is that it's an invisible force that bounds people together. And
Hmm.
not only does it enforce accountability, but it serves as a constantly on management without you having to micromanage. So
Yeah,
if you're forcing a top-down management arc and you're constantly trying to micromanage to make sure that people are delivering and doing exactly what they're doing, that's not scalable. And I've had leaders ask me, well, I have 200 people. Like I can't have one-on-ones with 200 people. I don't know that they're working on the stuff they're working on. How do I make sure? And I just tell them, well, you don't have the right culture and you don't have the right system set up to enforce that culture. So there's at the company that's larger, the management systems have to be set up to allow the culture to thrive. And the goal of a CEO is to set strategy and set culture.
yeah,
Culture provides the guardrails. It's also unspoken. It's also informal. So it will happen with or without guidance. It will happen. You will have a culture regardless of whether you intend to have a culture or not. And so it's about a leader's ability to shape and be really clear and understand what the actual culture is versus the one that you think it is. And
yeah,
having a disconnect with your employees on what the culture is a problem. And I'll give one
yeah,
great example of I like to see a lot of companies talk about their teams as families. This is a family. We're a family. We work hard for each other. We sacrifice for each other. No, I think that is a complete lie. And I don't think people should say that unless they're truly prepared to live up to what a family means. A
yeah,
family is there for you, whether you do well or not. Most good families are, right? A family is there for you and they expect you to be at your worst and at your best. I don't expect people to be at their worst at their jobs. They're showing up in a professional version of themselves and they're giving me their best every day. You leave the worst part of yourself at the door because this is a job. And
yeah,
so for me to try to instill the culture of family, but not actually be able to live up to it, that's when you start to create disconnects because over time, people will believe that that is hypocritical. So this is something we actually never say in our organization, right? We tell people this is what we expect. We give you a lot of flexibility. We trust you. But in no way am I ever going to say, well, we behave like we are a family with each other because I
yeah.
just don't think I can deliver that.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for sharing. And yeah, so the importance of culture really plays a pivotal role. And we say that culture can shape, right, an organizational behavior, and the people's behavior does have an impact, right, on the organization itself. So it's important to set it up clear and set the real expectation. Also, speaking about the culture, and I love your definition that is an invisible force, right? Because it's not there as a person beside you, you, but actually it drives you, right? When making decision and when delivering, the things that you do on daily basis. So thanks a lot for your insights on that. Now, leadership culture, and let's get back to technology and AI, artificial intelligence. We live in a in a very connected and digital world, and I would like to ask you as my fourth question, which are the the tips and tricks that you would like to share when using social media and platforms, right, that are all around us when building a network, and why networking as a skill is more than ever important in such digital and connected world.
Yes, I think networking takes on a new meaning when you have so many automated ways for people to reach out to each other,
Yeah.
especially not only just social media, but algorithms in general. In terms of what I think works, I think having genuine curiosity about someone else's work or their opinions or uh, their body of work, right? Their comments, their social posts. I think that is helpful. I think people can tell when you are genuinely engaged with them or you're simply out there trying to pitch your own product or sell something. The other thing I highly encourage people is to sort of go back to that old school way of networking, which is still word of mouth, right? The meetings I will take, and I get a million people reaching out to me on LinkedIn trying to pitch me their latest like AI startup idea or product for me to take a look. And frankly, like I don't even have time to filter through all of them. But the ones I do take meetings for is when one of my customers or another company who I know, their leader or their manager comes to me and says, "Hey, we kind of work with them, or I know this guy. You should get to know him." And I think that is more powerful than anything else. So rather than relying on social media platforms, truly rely on your network. Ask to
Mhm.
make an intro, sending an email, but having that email come from someone that other person respects and is aware of, that will speak volumes. And frankly,
Yes.
that is in the world of AI, how people start to differentiate themselves because they're real human beings. And
Yeah.
so being able to lean into your own humanity and the
Yeah.
fact that you're real and have opinions and be passionate and be caring and be curious, like those things AI cannot replace on the surface. So I really encourage people to think about what it is that makes them engaging and interesting and really lean into that versus then just blasting out cold email, LinkedIn requests, which frankly, over time, it will get
Yeah.
crowded out anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So it does not pay back, right? Leaning on simply platforms or algorithms that allows you to connect the one with each other. We needed to find the way to build a true relationship. So with the human side there, as you mentioned, because true relationship means finding building bridges, right, in a human way, meaning showing up with the qualities, with the values that you just mentioned, which are related to the human beings, as you mentioned. Thanks a lot for sharing, MJ. Wrapping up our conversation, we touched amazing topics. My last question for you is, if there is any quote or any insight that you would like to share with the audience, and if there is any project that you're working on that, of course, you would like to share that can capture the audience attention on what goes next for you.
Yeah, I don't have any quotes. I will say one of the things that I think has been very helpful, especially as we're trending more and more into sort of technology and automation, is I always encourage people to read great books and to read them in hard copy form. I think reading helps settle your mind down. It gives you focus. It also fiction. I read pretty much exclusively fiction at this point. It really desires to grapple with human complexity in a way that a lot of other books don't. And so having a great book by your side, you can never go wrong. It will always pay dividends. As for myself, sort of reinforcing that, I'm also a writer on the side. I just finished my first short story that is related to generative AI. And so my friends are looking at it right now, and I'm kind of workshopping it. And I'm going to be also continuing to write a series of letters to my kids around leadership and around self-awareness that hopefully I'll finish by sometime next year.
Wow, thanks a lot for sharing. And I mean, it's amazing to see how you are engaged in the AI, in the expertise that you have leveraged. So please continue on your journey and continue sharing, the things that we have just mentioned. I will be sharing in the podcast description the link of your LinkedIn profile, so the people will be able to connect with you if you want to, and if they want to, in order to explore more the things that you have shared today and learn more about, the digital things, the AI, and of course, everything that we have just shared today. I have ended up with my question, MJ. Thanks a lot for being a guest in the MACE podcast. I really appreciate your time, your insights, and your availability. Speak to you soon. Stay tuned, and of course, greetings from Italy.
But thank you.
Bye bye.